It can be very useful to talk about cooperatives in terms of their relationship between the member and the cooperative. And part of this is because cooperatives can exist in so many different sectors and can have so many different types of relationships, it can be useful to try and find some way to categorize the different types of cooperatives. And so there are some broad categories that we use, and these are somewhat common to many different cooperative sectors. But the first type of cooperative that we'll talk about is what we call a consumer cooperative or a service cooperative. And the idea here is that the relationship between the member and the cooperative is one where the cooperative is providing a good or a service to the member, and the member buys or takes part in that good or service. And so this is certainly the most common by the numbers in terms of cooperatives. So an example would be housing cooperatives or daycare cooperatives where members will pay a fee to become a member of the cooperative, which grants them access to housing, care for their children, and they pay a fee to cover the cost of those services. And the members will organize to create those types of cooperatives in order to provide those services at a reasonable cost. Probably the best known example in Canada, or one of the best known examples in Canada, is Mountain Equipment Co-op, where in order to shop at the store you need to be a member. And that co-op started very small in British Columbia with 6 or 7 members getting together in order to start a cooperative where they could source strong, rugged, environmental outdoor gear that was ethically sourced and produced. And it has now grown to almost 3 million members. So the idea is that if the relationship is one where the member is purchasing a good or a service or obtaining a good or a service from the cooperative by virtue of their membership, we term that a consumer or service cooperative. Credit unions would be also another example of those types of cooperatives. And so those the cooperative will also look at sourcing goods in a particular way, so they will bulk purchase, or they will make sure that the members have a say in where the goods come from and that sort of thing. So it can be a very powerful model, not only from a cost perspective, but in terms of controlling where the inventory comes from. And I know, for example, with Mountain Equipment Co-op, that's particularly important. They have very strong ethical purchasing policies that their members originally put in place and have been maintained over time. So any questions about the consumer model?
Yes, please. Do you pay the fee every time you have to buy the goods, or is it once a year, or what?
Usually the membership fee or the membership share is either a yearly or a one-time fee, but then there's also, every time you purchase the goods, you pay for the goods at the price. So, in a housing cooperative, it's usually monthly housing charges that you pay in order to live in the unit, but you pay a one-time membership fee or a very small yearly membership fee in order to simply to indicate to the cooperative that you have the right to exercise your voting rights and get access to those services, but you pay for the services either monthly or as you use them. So with child care cooperatives, for example, it's often a yearly fee that you pay to have your child in care for a full year. With Mountain Equipment Co-op, you pay a one-time fee to get access to the store, but every time you go in and you purchase the goods, you purchase them as you buy them. So it is not you don't necessarily get the goods for free. Membership simply allows you access to goods. Any other questions about the consumer or service model? Okay, so the other type of model that is quite common, and you often see it in the agricultural field, is what we call the producer model. And it's almost the reverse in the sense of the relationship between the member and the cooperative. In this case, the member produces a good or a service or a commodity that gets sold to or provided to the cooperative, and then the cooperative does something to those goods and services. They market them. In some cases, they process them, they package them, they jointly distribute them and sell it, sometimes to the general public, sometimes to another group of members or something similar. Probably some of the best examples here in Ontario are 2 big dairy cooperatives. One is Gailey Foods, and the other is Organic Meadow. Both of those are dairy cooperatives, and the members are dairy farmers. So they will sell their milk to the cooperative, and then the cooperative markets it under one label, under the Organic Meadow or the Gailey Foods label, and in some cases processes it. So in the case of Gailey, most of that milk is processed. So there's Gailey butter, whipped cream, cottage cheese, and because the cooperative controls those processing facilities and then sells it to the general public, anybody can go to the store and buy Gailey Foods if their grocery store covers it. Those profits go back to the cooperative and then are shared amongst the members. So not only are the members paid for their milk, they're also sharing in the profits of the extra money that is driven through the processing, process. In some cases, it's more about a cost-sharing thing where, for example, there's a group of organic farmers out close to Peterborough in the Quinte region, and they all grow very different types of organic fruits and vegetables or provide organic meat, and they have formed a cooperative to share with their distribution and access to farmers markets. So they don't necessarily do a lot of processing, but it's very expensive for them to transport their own goods to market. So they have come together to jointly share in the cost of transporting their goods to market. So it's not necessarily as though there's extra profit, but it's simply more cost efficient for them to come together and do that. So you will see a sort of a whole continuum of different types of producer cooperatives. Some are quite sizable, and others are much smaller sorts of organizations. Sometimes you will see groups of consultants come together to jointly market their services together. So, for example, there has been a group of translators that I know of in Hamilton that didn't want to be negotiating their own rates for court-appointed translator or written translating services, and so they came together to look at forming a cooperative so that they could jointly market their goods and ensure that there was some continuity in the rates that they were charging and what they were getting access to. So that's a good example of producer cooperatives.